Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. I never thought something as mundane as a broken TV remote would change the course of my entire life. But that's exactly what happened one rainy Tuesday evening in mid-October. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted from another day of endless Zoom calls and back-to-back spreadsheets. My husband, Derek, was on a week-long business trip in Denver. We'd been married for 7 years, not quite newlyweds, not yet old married couple. Our relationship had settled into a routine that was, if I'm honest, more comfortable than passionate. We had our love, but it was quiet now. Predictable. I'd convinced myself that was normal that night. I was looking forward to binge watching a show we'd promised to start together. But when I picked up the remote, it didn't work. No lights, no response. I changed the batteries. Nothing. Frustrated and a bit embarrassed, I remembered that my neighbor Ryan was a bit of a tech whiz. We'd exchanged hellos and small talk for months, but never more than that. He was in his mid-30s, recently divorced, and lived alone. Fit, quiet, always polite. Derek had jokingly referred to him once as the hot neighbor, but I barely noticed. At least, I told myself I didn't. I hesitated before knocking on his door, remote in hand. It felt silly, but I was alone and needed help. When he opened the door, barefoot and wearing a soft-looking hoodie and joggers, he smiled in a way that was disarmingly warm. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked, his eyes flickering down to the remote. "Yeah, sorry, random question." My TV remote just stopped working, and I thought maybe you'd know what to do? He chuckled. "Sure. Want me to take a look?" He followed me into my apartment, a faint trace of his cologne trailing behind him, subtle and clean. The kind that lingers without overpowering. What was supposed to be a 5-minute favor turned into a 2-hour conversation. He fixed the remote in 10 minutes. Some strange reset combination I never would have figured out. But after that, he stayed. He asked if I wanted to have a drink, just one. I said yes. We sat on the couch, drinks in hand. The glow of the now working TV flickering in the background, though neither of us watched it. We talked, really talked. About everything. From movies to work to our failed relationships. I admitted how distant Derek and I had become lately, how lonely I felt even when he was home. Ryan listened in that way that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. He never interrupted. He didn't offer cheap advice, he just saw me dot as the night deepened, the air between us changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in how he looked at me, a slower pause between words. And then he reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear dot my breath caught. I should have stopped him. I should have said something about boundaries, about Derek, about how this wasn't what I intended when I knocked on his door. But I didn't. I let him kiss me dot. It started soft, unsure. But it escalated quickly, as if all the loneliness, all the tension I'd buried over the years came pouring out at once. We ended up in my bedroom. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about love or guilt or marriage. I just felt, and for the first time in years, I felt wanted. I felt alive dot the next morning. I woke up tangled in sheets I had shared with someone who wasn't my husband. Ryan was still asleep, one arm draped over me. I slipped out of bed and stood by the window, watching the rain return. Guilt crept in slowly, like fog rolling across a field. I didn't tell Derek when he got home. I couldn't. I spent the next week pretending everything was fine, replaying that night with Ryan on loop in my head, the way he touched me like I was fragile and fierce at once, the way he listened like I mattered. But secrets have a way of growing teeth. 3 weeks later, Derek found a text on my phone. It wasn't even explicit, just a message from Ryan that said, "Can't stop thinking about that night." That was all it took. Derek confronted me. I confessed. I cried. He didn't. He just stared at me like I was a stranger. I offered therapy. He packed a bag dot. We separated a week later dot. As for Ryan, We tried, we really did. But the affair that felt so thrilling in the shadows crumbled in the daylight. He moved a few months later. I never saw him again. It's been over a year now. The divorce is finalized. I live alone. I got a new TV. I haven't needed help with it since. Sometimes, late at night, I ask myself why I did it. Was it just the loneliness? The attention? A cry for something more? I don't know. All I know is this. I asked my neighbor for help with the TV. What happened next was unbelievable, and I'm still living with the consequences. After Derek left, the silence in the apartment was brutal. I had never known how loud emptiness could be. Every drawer he had emptied, every shelf that used to hold his cologne or socks, became a monument to what I had ruined. I stopped watching TV altogether. It felt ridiculous, like some symbol of how it all started, a cursed object. I couldn't bring myself to turn it on, couldn't sit on that couch where Ryan and I had laughed, drank, touched, blurred the lines. Ryan texted a few times. The first time it was, I didn't mean for this to happen this way. Are you okay? I didn't answer. I didn't know how. I didn't know what okay meant anymore. Then a few days later, do you want to talk? Eventually, I said yes. We met again. This time, it wasn't passionate. It was quiet, sober. We sat across from each other at a coffee shop, both of us aware that we weren't in a fantasy anymore. There were no dim lights or wine glasses, no impulsive glances. Just two people surrounded by the wreckage they caused, or helped cause. I never meant to blow up your life, he said softly. You didn't, I replied. I lit the match. There was a silence between us that felt longer than it was. Ryan reached for my hand across the table. I let him take it. For a few weeks, we tried to build something. We went on walks, cooked dinner together. He helped me repaint the spare room Derek used as an office. It almost felt normal. But the problem was, we started in the middle of a lie, not just to Derek, but to ourselves. Because the truth is, once the excitement faded, I realized Ryan wasn't my escape. He wasn't even what I really wanted. He was a reaction, a sudden, bright flame in the middle of a cold winter. And that kind of fire never lasts. The final time I saw him, we were on my balcony. Fall had returned, and the leaves were that brilliant, defiant orange. He handed me a cup of coffee and said, "You're still looking for something, aren't you?" I nodded. "I don't think it's me," he added. I nodded again. He left without a hug, without tears. Just the soft click of the door behind him. A year later, I started therapy. I took a long look at who I had become, the version of myself that had allowed silence and disconnection to build up like dust in corners. I started unpacking the loneliness I had been carrying in my marriage, in myself, and what I had tried to substitute with It wasn't about Ryan. It wasn't even about Derek. It was about me, how I had forgotten my own worth in the blur of daily life, how I had waited too long to speak up about what I needed, until one night, I let someone else make me feel seen. I ran into Derek once at a bookstore. It had been almost 10 months. He looked good, healthier, clearer. We made small talk. It wasn't angry, but it wasn't tender either. Just the complicated neutrality of two people who had once shared a bed, a home, a life, and then nothing. He asked me if I was happy. "I'm getting there," I said. He nodded. Me too. The unbelievable part, it wasn't just the affair. It wasn't the night with Ryan or the explosion of guilt that followed. The unbelievable part was that everything cracked open, and instead of falling apart, I began to rebuild. Not into the woman I had been with Derek, not the woman who made a reckless mistake with a neighbor, but someone entirely new, someone honest, someone who would never again wait until things were broken to ask for help. 3 years had passed. Sometimes it felt like it had all happened in another life, like the woman who slept with her neighbor. Wasn't me, but someone I used to know. I lived in a smaller apartment now, cozy and warm. A few blocks away from my old home with Derek, I'd started freelancing, working in interior design, something I had always wanted to do, but never had the courage to pursue. I hadn't seen or heard from Ryan in all that time. He had disappeared from my life as quietly as he entered it, until one afternoon in May. I was at a local design fair, just browsing. Nothing serious. When I saw him, Ryan, he was standing at a booth, talking to a woman with long, dark hair, and a baby strapped to her chest in a front carrier. He looked older, not tired, just changed, fuller beard, broader shoulders, softer eyes. I froze. My instinct was to turn around, to disappear into the crowd. But then, as if he felt my presence, he looked up. His eyes met mine, and he smiled. "Wow," he said when we finally stood face to face. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." I laughed nervously. "Same." He gestured to the woman and child. "This is Hannah, my wife, and this little tornado is Lily." I blinked. "Wife?" He nodded. "Married last year." Something heavy settled in my chest. Not jealousy, not really. Something stranger. A quiet ache, like seeing a photo of a place you once visited and realizing someone else lives there now. We chatted awkwardly. I complimented Lily's eyes. He asked how I'd been. We avoided everything that mattered. That one night, the collapse of my marriage. The failed attempt. At something between us. We both pretended that part of our past was dusted over and forgotten, but it wasn't, not really. Something stranger. A quiet ache, like seeing a photo of a place you once visited and realizing someone else lives there now. We chatted awkwardly. I complimented Lily's eyes. He asked how I'd been. We avoided everything that mattered. That one night, the collapse of my marriage, the failed attempt at something between us. We both pretended that part of our past was dusted over and forgotten, but it wasn't, not really. As we parted ways, he touched my arm gently and leaned in. "You look good." "Peaceful." I swallowed. "I am," and it was true. I didn't want him anymore. I didn't regret him either. But he was no longer someone I loved or hated. He was just someone I once used to know at the wrong time. It was a rainy night. Again. Just like the beginning when I heard a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, my heart stopped. Derek. He looked haunted. But older, too. Thinner. He was soaked, like he hadn't even bothered with an umbrella. "Can I come in?" I let him. He stood in the doorway, dripping water on my clean floors, and said nothing for a while. Then finally he said, "I never stopped loving you." The air thinned. I couldn't breathe. "You were the love of my life," he continued. "Even when it was boring. Even when it was hard. Even when you—" "I know," I whispered. "I was drowning." I didn't ask for help. And then I did the worst thing I could. We stood there in silence. Years of anger, confusion, betrayal hanging between us like smoke. "I'm not the same person," I said finally. "I don't even know if we're compatible anymore." "I'm not the same either," he said. "That might be a good thing." He pulled something from his pocket. A photo? Us. From 4 years ago. Laughing on a beach in Tulum. I remembered that day, not for the photo, but for how free I had felt in that moment. Before the silence began, "Why are you here, Derek?" He met my eyes. I wanted to see if there's still anything left. Even if it's just enough to start over. My heart twisted. I didn't know if I could trust him. I didn't know if I could trust myself, but I wanted to find out. It wasn't the affair that was. Unbelievable. It wasn't the text message Derek found, or the way I broke our vows for a moment of feeling alive. The truly unbelievable thing? It's that after everything, the lies, the shame, the heartbreak, love found its way back. Not the old love. Not the innocent, naive kind. But a love that had been through hell and still asked, "Is there more?" We started therapy. We went slow. We made new memories in different places. And one morning, over coffee, Derek asked, "Do you regret what happened?" I thought about it. The betrayal. The fallout. The pain I caused. The person I became. "No," I said. "I regret why it happened, but not what it taught me." He nodded, and in that moment, I knew we were finally writing a new chapter, not built on denial, not on blame, but on truth.